In 2008, the world changed forever.
The worst day on Wall Street.
We're now down 43%.
Home prices were skyrocketing.
Lehman Brothers is going bankrupt.
How low will it go? The stock market.
The credit crunch has brought Formula One crashing back down to earth.
We're in the midst of a serious financial crisis.
Chaos erupted in just about every part of life as we know it today. And eventually, even our billionaire boys club got affected, especially Honda, who was forced to cut costs in just about every department. All of a sudden, their F1 team became a liability instead of an asset. It had to go. This is where Brawn GP enters the picture, and in their first ever season, they did the impossible, becoming the only team in F1 history to never lose a world championship. This is the mind-boggling and slightly controversial story of the team that changed Formula One forever. Usually, teams who only compete for a single season are absolutely atrocious. Think Life and Andrea Moda. But for this small, ambitious British team, it was the exact opposite. They ended up smashing everyone's expectations, including their own. Jenson Button proved his doubters wrong too. I'll cover Jenson in more detail later, but this is how the team came about in the first place. I'm going to take you back a few years to the start of the Honda F1 factory team. It began in 2006. They had Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello driving for them, and they had a crazy amount of money behind them, but to be honest, you wouldn't think it from watching them in action. In 2006, the year after taking over from Barr, they were actually quite fast, scoring podiums and even giving Button his first ever Formula One win. But that was the highlight of their 3 years at Honda, because after that, they weren't exactly a front-running team. That's being kind, actually. They were terrible. In 2007, they scored no podiums, and their best finish was 5th at the Chinese GP. 2008 wasn't much better. Barrichello scored their only podium in a crazy wet race. It was looking pretty dismal for the Japanese giants, and it was about to get a lot worse. With Honda being a Japanese company, it impacted them harder than everyone else.
The stock market slide continued today.
Japan is a country built on pride, honor, and respect, and to their head honchos, spending hundreds of millions of dollars on motor racing when their country and people are in a recession just didn't sit well. So without much hesitation, they decided to pull out of F1 in December of 2008.
Spiraling costs and little success on the track means that if a deal isn't struck soon, the whole team will be closed down with the loss of 800 British jobs.
Just months before the 2009 season was due to begin. This wasn't exactly great news for Formula One, or Honda's hundreds of employees, or Honda's drivers. Everyone knew that having a company like them in F1 was a massive deal. But what if something even bigger could come from them leaving? Let's backtrack just a small bit first. On the 12th of November 2007, Ross Brawn was announced as the team principal of the Honda F1 team.
Ross Brawn, the most successful technical director in recent years, has joined Honda as team principal. Ross, welcome to the team.
He worked in that role for a year, up until they decided to pull the plug. Anyway, when he heard that they were selling it, he had a crazy idea.
There are two choices. Walk away with our sales, stay on there, or we can fight.
He wanted to buy it himself. Well, it was mostly him, because he rounded up a few other people to make his life easier.
Are we going to fight?
Yes.
Are we going to fight? Yes.
Honda's Formula One team looks set to be rebranded in the new season.
Ross and his group bought the team and all of its assets, and Ross now owned the majority, 54% to be exact, of an F1 team. The team name? Brawn GP.
That was my marketing contribution.
The name.
The name.
The date the team was formed, the 9th of March. The first race of the 2009 season, the 29th of March. On a serious note though, how much do you think Mr. Ross paid for such an established F1 team? If you know, you know. If you don't, put your guess in the comments right now. I'll wait. For Brawn and his boys, buying the team wasn't an easy decision either. A coin toss, if you will. It's one of the most famous parts of this last-minute deal. Whatever your guess might have been, I'm pretty confident to say it was wrong. Honda sold their entire Formula One team for less than it was worth. I mean, way less than it was worth.
When we finally closed the deal, I gave £1 to the Honda executive
to formalise the deal.
One single Great British pound! To put that into context, McLaren's racing CEO Zach Brown said recently that every F1 team is worth at least $1.3 billion at the moment. At the time though, it wasn't an obvious decision. It turned out that they were sort of both doing each other a favour. Honda sold the team for £1 as a legal requirement to sell the deal. In return, Ross and his group were taking on a lot of debt, including the hundreds of employees who needed to get paid every month. Not easy when your pockets are already pretty tight.
In a way, you persuaded Honda to change their minds and take this on board.
They would have spent $100 million to shut the company. We said, don't waste that money because then there's nothing left.
At least Hiroshi Oshima has something left though. He was the motorsports managing officer of Honda at the time, and he still has the actual £1 coin that Ross gave him.
Do you have the pound?
Yes.
I want to check. I want to see the pound that bought the team.
But if it looked like Ross got himself a pretty sweet deal at the time, it was about to get a whole lot better. The FIA was launching one of the biggest regulation changes in years. The aim was to increase overtaking. Funny how they're still trying to do that 15 years later, but that's a story for another video. The 09 cars were going to have lower and wider front wings, narrower and higher rear wings, and move to slick tyres, and most importantly have little to no aero parts on the bodywork. These changes were supposed to reduce the amount of downforce, so like always, teams started looking for other ways to get it back. Hold that thought, because in 2008, Honda was having a nightmare weekend pretty much every weekend. So they decided to start designing their 09 car early, and when they did, they came across something pretty unbelievable. A guy called Masayuki Minagawa was an aerodynamicist for Honda, and he discovered a loophole in the regs that changed everything. He came up with the idea of adding a second diffuser to the rear crash structure of the car. This idea turned into the famous double diffuser. It was this device that turned out to not just be Brawn GP's lifeline, but their golden ticket to the World Championship. I'm gonna oversimplify it a lot, but basically they made two holes in the floor of the car, which fed more air into the second diffuser. It created a crazy amount of downforce and controversy. More on that later. When the team did their simulations in the factory for the 2009 season, they got a bit of a surprise.
And we couldn't understand where we'd gone wrong because our simulation showed we would be a second and a half quicker.
Jock Clear, engineer for Rubens Barrichello that year, also said,
"Well, you've clearly got your numbers wrong then, haven't you?
Right.
Duh. You know, as if we're going to be 2 seconds faster than everybody."
It looked like they made some huge mistakes already and didn't know what their expectations should be. Well, testing makes it sound like Brawn did a lot of it, but they really didn't. Their budget was so incredibly small, they couldn't even afford to rent the full Silverstone track before their pre-season shakedown. So they rented the Stowe circuit instead, which is basically half of Silverstone, showed up with their small tents and did a few laps.
It was pretty much like camping.
And with that, they were off to pre-season testing. By now, they were cautiously optimistic. They had a feeling their car was decent, but you don't really know until you get the car on track and actually compare it to your rivals. When they arrived at pre-season testing in Barcelona, Button smashed the best lap times straight away.
And I was like, what?
It was hard for anyone to believe, but you know what they say, the stopwatch never lies, and Brawn GP found themselves with a genuinely outstanding car. However, it turned out that Brawn wasn't the only team who had thought of the clever double diffuser. Barcelona revealed that Toyota and Williams had some big brain moments too. They had spotted the exact same loophole, invented the double diffuser, and developed their own versions. Aren't humans brilliant? Brawn clearly had the best overall package though, but Toyota and Williams had an instant boost in pace from their double diffusers. So, like always in F1, it didn't take the other teams long to get upset.
Did you already feel that they were going to protest the cars?
Yeah.
They argued that the double diffuser was illegal and wanted it removed from the three teams' cars. But time is precious, especially in F1. Not just on track, but off it too. So even though the 7 teams were protesting, they were already at work in the background developing their own double diffuser in case their appeals were denied. And that was definitely a good idea because, as you probably guessed, the first protest was unsuccessful and the double diffuser was declared legal on Thursday the 26th of March, just 3 days before the first race in Australia.
All of us, all the teams were aware there was something against the rules.
So the FIA said the car is fine,
Yes.
and everybody else was saying they're cheating?
Only one team in their debut race in the history of the sport have been able to get pole position, and then go on to win.
It didn't make the other teams any happier when Brawn won the season-opening Australian Grand Prix.
Jenson Button's a winner again. Brawn GP are winners on their first race appearance, and not only that, it's a 1-2 finish.
This was the first time a team had finished 1-2 on their debut since Mercedes in the 1954 French Grand Prix. The whole weekend seemed more like a dream than reality. The actual reality wasn't a complete dream for them though. While they were winning on track, they also announced that they were laying off over 350 employees.
But you knew what was going to happen in Brackley, so it wasn't really jumping around with the joy, because probably 50% of your colleagues wouldn't be there when you got back.
So even though they were on top of the world, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Little did they know they were about to encounter one of the hardest challenges of their careers. The protests from other teams kept on coming. They went as far as the International Court of Appeal after the 4th race in Bahrain.
Formula One could be thrown into disarray as championship leader Jenson Button waits to hear whether his car is legal.
Ferrari called it illegal.
They went too far.
Brawn have dominated. The other teams say simply not fair. Is that a case of sour grapes?
An appeal court at the sport's governing body is meeting now in Paris.
Once you move to an appeal court, you're being judged by a different group of people, and that's the uncertainty.
To discuss whether the World Championship leaders' Brawn team have broken the rules.
The car that British driver Jenson Button raced to victory has been approved by the sport's governing body.
And by this point, Jenson Button had won 3 of the first 4 races. In fact, Jenson went on to win 6 of the first 7 races, with a 3rd place finish in the other. It looked like nobody would be able to challenge him to the title. But then, this season took another dramatic twist. On the 21st of June, when it all started to fall apart for Brawn, it was Jenson's home race, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone.
This is the one that I wanted to win so much. You could hear the crowd, you could see the crowd all cheering, and I think they just loved the story.
But the car was nowhere near what it used to be.
Jenson Button 7 seconds down already. What a shock for him. 2 weeks ago, he'd already got the lead.
I'm really struggling with understeer high speed.
And the best he could do was just P6.
We'll take 4th, Rosberg 5th, and Jenson Button 6th.
See, halfway through this season, Brawn's lack of budget was really starting to show. They had started the year with a massive advantage and held it for the first 7 races. They weren't able to develop the car much though, and things started to change quickly. The outcome of the entire championship depended on one thing: how quickly the big teams would be developing and implementing their own double diffusers. And one team came out on top: Red Bull. They started giving Brawn a harder time in the second half of the season. In the first 7 races, Button won 6. In the final 10, he won 0. As well as Sebastian Vettel stealing 3 wins in the second half, Jenson lost every bit of confidence he had.
In Formula One, you're either giving pressure or you're taking pressure. There's nothing in between.
Coming out of Japan, do you recall your mindset?
So I left Japan pretty down. That's what I remember telling myself. 2 races to go to hold on to this championship that had been shrinking for months.
What are your thoughts on the last 2 races?
We are here to fight, and obviously, the best thing we can do is win.
This led to an unbelievable title fight, with the points gap at the top closing after almost every race. Even after the mid-season resurgence by Seb though, it just wasn't enough to catch up. Jenson and Brawn won enough races in the first half of the season and built up such a huge points gap that Red Bull simply ran out of time, and Brawn won both the Constructor and Driver Championships in a monumental end to the season.
So much understeer in the car. And then I started losing rear grip.
Hey firm, no, we should have been on it.
Finishes his lap 3 seconds slower than his teammate.
Brazil was the last chance for Seb to win the championship.
At the moment, he's down in 16th, Sebastian Vettel. He's not improving.
He honestly believed he could still do it.
Jenson Button, 14th fastest. Dear me. The only championship contender still in qualifying. This would play very much into the hands of Rubens Barrichello.
Sebastian, just tell us how tough it was.
I think I went to the pool, not to the racetrack today.
Rubens Barrichello knows the time to beat, and he's done it!
Are you kidding me?
The grandstand is alive, and Rubens Barrichello delivers while Jenson Button suffers.
My heart just sank.
3 contenders, 1 mission.
He has to get P5 to secure the championship. Did you think he could do it? Did you even think about that?
This is going to change me from being a the racing driver.
And we're away in Brazil. Barrichello looking to get in there and leads well. So Jenson Button into the top 10.
To a Formula One world champion.
He's got a chance there, but he's coming back up on the inside now. Can he do it?
Button's done
Button's
it.
gone through.
Nothing can stop me right now.
You have a puncture, Rubens. It's got worse there for Rubens Barrichello. Complete despair on the Brawn pit wall. He started from pole, he hoped to win. He's not even going to be on the podium now, it would seem. And it's drifting away from Rubens Barrichello.
Button's doing exactly what he needs to do. 5th place.
It felt like the longest race in history.
Gents, 4 laps to go. 4 laps.
I don't need a countdown.
This is a drive now to the championship for Jenson Button. And now here comes Jenson Button, the 2009 world champion. Look at the relief, look at the joy. It's all now out in the open.
You are the world champion.
It's really amazing, and after the last few races I've had, this one makes up for it. That was just such an awesome race, and I'm world champion, baby.
It blew us all away, and it gave F1 a huge boost in popularity. Just 8 months earlier, people would have laughed at you if you said they were going to win a race, let alone take in both championships. The late charge from Red Bull made it even sweeter and created an even more exciting season than it had been already. But what was next? The Drivers' Championship was clinched by Button in Brazil. They had been through unbelievable ups and downs and changed F1 history forever. But after the next and final round of the year in Abu Dhabi, Brawn GP was no more. The name Brawn GP was no more anyway, because they decided to sell. And top of the list buyers was the company that supplied their engines, Mercedes. They bought it on the 16th of November 2009 and turned it into the Mercedes GP factory team for the 2010 season. It was a massive help for Mercedes to buy a team that already had a brilliant and highly developed car. It's obviously a lot easier than starting a team from scratch, and it didn't take too long for them to turn it into an even more competitive group. They spent the remaining 4 years of the V8 era having varying levels of success, but we all know what happened in 2014 when they introduced their rocket ship hybrid engine. And just as a reminder, they won 8 Constructors Championships and 7 Drivers Championships in a row. It's not an exaggeration to say that Brawn GP changed Formula One forever. As I mentioned earlier, they saved Honda from spending hundreds of millions of pounds to close the team. And it's safe to say, if Ross Brawn hadn't stepped up, the era of Mercedes dominance more than likely wouldn't have happened.
一番いいとこに落ち着いた。
Seriously though, just think about it for a second. 2009 was Brawn GP's first and last season ever. They won both championships. They're the only F1 team in history to literally never lose a season. So next time someone asks you how Mercedes was so successful, tell them about Brawn or Honda. Or if you want to go back even further, tell them about Tyrrell in 1968. But that's probably a story for another video. But Brawn weren't the only ones to buy an existing F1 team. We have Stewart Grand Prix, which turned into Red Bull Racing. And I think we all know how that's going. These blockbuster teams all have one thing in common though. They all had their go at dominating F1. Classic stories about legendary drivers, behind the scenes antics, and tales from the old days all go hand in hand. That's why I made a video on the most dominant teams in F1 history. To answer the biggest question of them all, what was truly the most dominating team/driver of all time? The answer might surprise you.